Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, it's a great honour to present this petition. Firstly, I thank the member of Myall Lakes, Mr. Stephen Bromhead MP, for allowing me this great honour to present it to the House on behalf of the people of Myall Lakes and indeed all those on the mid-north coast and in that area. So to achieve a petition of greater than 10,000 signatures is a huge result, and it's great to see their voice being heard in this place. It's certainly being heard in my area of the Upper Hunter, and how important this is for the people in that area. So this is all about the inlets for the Manning River and those connections to the ocean. The Manning River, of course, is the only double delta river system in Australia, and that's where the river splits into two and basically breaks into the ocean. Just to educate the House on that. And of course, there's two inlets, and the northern Harrington Inlet, it already has a northern breakwall and was built many years ago and is still there. And of course, the southern one, the Farquhar Inlet, which is not there. So they're the two inlets that are of the Manning River, and of course this affects those great communities of Old Bar, Taree and Harrington, and of course, but everyone throughout the Hunter, through the mid-north coast, everyone knows about this region. It is a great playground for all of us during our summer holidays, and a great place to work, rest and play. The petition is all about opening up a navigation channel in the Manning River, and of course it has huge support, not just in the fact that we've had a petition here in the House, but we've got a unanimous decision by Council to support this. They are truly sort of yelling for this to happen. They are absolutely passionate about it, and it's all about the area growth. Wanting to support those water-loving communities on the mid-north coast. Firstly, there are a lot of benefits if we can get that navigation channels open, firstly, I think the most important is, and socially, that the people there, they are, coastal loving people, they're boating loving people, their way of life is certainly, they're great fishermen in that area of the world, but it's part of their way of life. They live on the river, the ocean is part of it, the beaches are very important. Look, but not just socially, let me tell you, economically, this idea just makes sense. To open up that channel is very important for stimulating local businesses, for making sure that the growth in tourism, in terms of boat building, for example, businesses there. It was very hard to get those boats out if you've built a boat and you can't get through that channel. I can assure you of that. Even that's coming from someone from the Upper Hunter. And but in that area, of course, it's great agriculture and oysters, and everyone in this house loves an oyster, and of course a few prawns, but mostly oysters in this area of the world, and it's a huge industry. We need the infrastructure there opened up to do that. Safety, we do have to think about safety. Getting boats in and out of that region is very important, and if you opening it up will be a much safer option for everyone. Flood mitigation. It is so important that we open up this channel for flood mitigation. We have seen the damage that floods can actually do in this area, and so we need to make sure that we can put in the mitigation now so that when we do get huge rains, it's actually protected in the future. Unless we actually start opening up these channels and install the infrastructure that these communities want, it is a constraint on that area. So this is critical for that community. And recently, the member for Myall Lakes has announced the Manning River Task Force, which has completed its report and delivered a number of options that we can, short-term, long-term, It is what we have to go forward. I thank the people of Myall Lakes for putting this petition here in the House, and I commend it to this House.
Yeah, he's here.
Madam Speaker.
Member for Swansea.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I rise to contribute to this petition debate as well. And I too would like to thank those community members in Myall Lakes for banding together and putting this petition into the New South Wales Parliament, a matter that is clearly very important to that community. And I know how difficult it is to get 10,000 signatures, and the member for Myall Lakes has done that and brought it to the Parliament, and I concur with the member for Upper Hunter that the community ought to be congratulated. Madam Speaker, the member for Upper Hunter is quite right. Our waterways are so incredibly special and so beautiful, and if they're not navigable, then they're pretty useless. And it is the case, Madam Speaker, that I myself, the member for Swansea, experience a lake that also becomes unnavigable. And like the member for the Upper Hunter and like the community up there, I too want our waterways to be navigable at all time. As the member for Upper Hunter said, you know, there are lots of opportunities with our waterways. There are business opportunities, there's a lot of entertainment opportunities, there's, you know, any number of opportunities, and they really do bring economic prosperity to the local community. And if they're not navigable, then we end up in a situation where we're actually missing out on things. And I will give this example to the House, Madam Speaker. 3 large yachting races have been cancelled in Lake Macquarie as a result of vessels not having the confidence of being actually able to get in and out of the lake because it has been shoaled up. Now, Madam Speaker, the good news is that last year, well, more than a year ago in actual fact, the Parliamentary Secretary for the Hunter, the member in the other place, Taylor Martin, announced a $6.2 million dredging program. Now, that was actually announced as a stimulus funding measure. Now, obviously, we're a bit late, like it's been more than a year now. However, I was very pleased to hear that the Swansea Channel was the #1 priority when that announcement was made. So we do look forward to that starting sometime soon. But I would say to the member for Myall Lakes that you know, he too should be trying to seek some of that funding for his waterways as well up there that are obviously in a very similar situation to the Swansea Channel in the electorate of Swansea. Madam Speaker, it is actually the state's responsibility to ensure that our channels are navigable. It is there, you can read it, I have read it myself, and it is therefore the state's responsibility to actually get this done. Many years ago, we owned dredgers in this state, but unfortunately we don't any longer, and we rely on contractors to come in and do the work. Unfortunately, I've been told that they're quite, from Maritime, that they are difficult to get at the moment, and perhaps that's just a product of the world that we live in, I'm unsure. But we actually need to have an ongoing maintenance program along the eastern seaboard. Instead of us responding all the time to a problem, we need to get proactive in this space. We should have an ongoing maintenance program of all of the waterways that are not navigable as a result of shoaling. And it's pretty simple, Madam Speaker. It's not rocket science at all. And if we actually, and we've got $6.2 million sitting in a bank account somewhere, who'd know, yet it hasn't, that money has not actually been distributed in any way to fix any of these problems. So it really is for the government to just put together, in my view, a ongoing, long-term dredging maintenance program for the state of New South Wales so that communities like the Myall Lakes community, so that communities like the Swansea community or the Lake Macquarie community don't have to keep doing these petitions, coming down here and seeking funding from the government to ensure that their channels are navigable. The money's there, Madam Speaker. Just Look, I absolutely agree with the members on the other
Order.
side. Just get in and do it. We do need to have our waterways navigable. We're very proud communities, water communities, and we're proud of our waterways, but we want to make sure they are safe, we want to make sure that they are navigable, and we want to make sure they're used. And at the moment, we don't have those three things, and it really is quite sad. But, Madam Speaker, I very much support this motion in the House, and I very much thank the Myall Lake community and their representative.
The question is that the House take note of the petition. I call the member for Clarence.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker, and it's a pleasure to rise to support the member for Upper Hunter on him advocating on behalf of the 10,000 petitioners, and also, of course, it's disappointing and sad that the member for Myall Lakes can't be here to represent those 10,000 signatures petitioners. Like the other members that have spoken, I too come from a community which has a river entrance and a river running through it, in the Clarence River, and we suffer similarly to what they do, where the river is silted up, and there seems to be some sort of reluctance to dredge the river to make it navigable again, and a navigable river has as much status as a trafficable road, because that's the way that New South Wales was settled in the early days. It was via river, which is why we have a community like Lismore, which was settled on the Wilson River, because that's how they got to Lismore. They couldn't get there by road, and they settled there, and of course we know what's happened to Lismore because it's flood prone. But that's the history of Lismore. It was settled by people who travelled there by river, because that's the only way they could get there. Not only that as a means of transport, but they were also able to use it to move goods to and from their communities. And so ensuring that our river systems are navigable is absolutely fundamental to not just to business, but to those communities on the river. And the Manning is no different to the Clarence. And as the member for Upper Hunter pointed out, it is a bit difficult because it does have two openings which cause some difficulties, but nonetheless, modern science and modern technology can deal with that, and we just need to go ahead, and we need to dredge our rivers, not just for the boaters that are there and our fishing fleet and the recreational users of the river, and also for those people who rely on it to get goods up and down the river. But also, as was pointed out by the member for Upper Hunter, for flood mitigation purposes, because when a river is silted up, it will hold back and retard water, and that causes more problems to those communities that are upstream from the river. And we know that happened with the Clarence River when it flooded in February and March. There was a high tide, and of course the river is silted up and hasn't been dredged for some time, and that retarded the water back, and it was a massive flood for the lower river communities. And so I agree with the member for Upper Hunter and the member for Swansea. We do need and Myall Lakes, of course, and the 10,000 signature petitioners. We do need to dredge these rivers. It is important, it is incumbent on the government to make sure that our river systems are navigable, because they do have that status of being a thoroughfare, of being able to be accessed by boaters. They have the same right to access the country as do motorists on a roadway. And so it is incumbent on government to go ahead. And I know that a business case has been prepared, and I know that the government is considering it. I would urge them to move with haste, and not just on the Manning, but all those other rivers that have been silted up, and it's been some time since they've been dredged. It's important for that, not just for those communities, as I said before, but it's important for business, for the economy of those local communities. We need to be able to use that river as it was intended. And the fact that it's silted up, we've got ways and means to deal with that. And that we've got dredges up and down the coast. And I know that there's a dredge that operates on the Tweed River, and the member for Tweed can speak about that.
Operates it a bit.
And so, if it can be done at the Tweed, then certainly it can be done on all those other river systems that have been silted up over time, like the Clarence, like the Manning River, And I know in the Clarence that it does impact on business, because we've got a business there in Harwood Marine that build boats and that maintain boats. They have barges come in there, and often they have to wait for a high tide because there's just not enough draft to allow the vessel to come in. And that really impacts on a business that employs something like 60 or 70 people. And so it's ridiculous to think in this day and age that we don't allow a dredging of the river to allow business to flourish, people to have jobs, to boost our local economy, and of course to make it safe for those communities. So I commend the petition to the House.
Thank the member for Clarence. The question is that the House take note of the petition.
I learned a lot more than I knew before.
And I'll call the member for Gosford.
It wouldn't be hard.
Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, I rise too to thank the member for Myall Lakes and the Myall Lakes community for this really important statement in the New South Wales Parliament. And just by hearing my colleagues on both sides of the chambers, I can't stress enough that the New South Wales government seems to have dropped the ball on dredging. It really... Well, I mean, you're implying what's going on there. I'm sorry, but I support the member for Myall Lakes and the community calling on a permanent solution for what's happening up there on the Manning River, because we need a permanent solution in Gosford as well. It seems really unfair that the member for Swansea has to get up in this place and holler, the member for Clarence has to holler, the member for Gosford has to holler, because our waterways are so crucially important. And historically we were built on the waterways. The Brisbane Water was a really important boat building community, and that's why we took off as a community. It's a beautiful space, and we took huge deep keel boats out through the Brisbane Water. But Madam Speaker, we had a bit of a fiasco in 2018 when there was a standoff about funding for dredging the waterway between the New South Wales Government and the local council, to the point that our local public ferry stopped running for a period of time, and that had a huge impact on our community, not just on the ferry service and those in the ferry, and they had to shut it down because of the risk, and actually hit the bottom on a couple of occasions, which is really dangerous commuters, so they pulled the pin, which majorly impacted. I mean, our school students use the ferry to get from one side of the Pittwater, one side of the Hawkesbury River to another. Lots and lots of our workers use that to get to work from one side to the other. Our tradies in particular travel down to the northern beaches to get to work and down there on the buses. And our tourists really love that beautiful ferry trip from Palm Beach to Ettalong. It's glorious either way, but it's also, as a result of that, the tourists that come from Palm Beach into the Ettalong community spend their money, and we lost that whole spending for a summer, which was a real devastation for our community, and then came on the back of that COVID. So our waterways are really important in so many ways, and we must keep them open. So much so that we had a huge meeting at Ettalong Diggers when that happened, with 400 people from the community. So our waterways are not just for those people using the ferry, they're for our recreational fishers. We've got Scott Levi at ABC. He lets me know whenever the channel's looking like it's a bit dodgy. Our fishers...
On the ABC.
On the ABC Radio Central Coast. And also, I might support the member for Swansea said what's missing out from the yachting community and yachting competition. It's also happening in the Brisbane waters, because when the waterways need to be dredged, our sailing club misses out on competitions. Our sailors miss out from going out to compete against the Pittwater yachties, and the Pittwater yachties miss out on competing against people in the Gosford environment. So it's a super important resource. The Swansea Channel as well is a really important waterway that keep open, and the member for Swansea keeps me up to date on how many rescues, as does our marine rescue, how many rescues go on in the Swansea Channel at the moment, which just shouldn't be happening. Once again, I reiterate, we need a regular dredging program that happens up and down the coast. It's a pity that we have to call out in Parliament, but we need a solution that doesn't result in this. We're committed, we're coastal, and we're bound by our waterways, we're bound by this method of transportation, and we need something more than business cases being prepared. In my community, we've got another business case being prepared, and we're slowly shifting the channel markers to make it safer. But I know at the moment, I don't want to go through that channel at the same time the ferry's coming the other way, because it's actually not safe. And we don't see dredging on the horizon in the very near future in the Brisbane waters. And I'm nodding here, the member for Fairfield, whose dad's a fisherman, knows the importance of keeping our waterways clear and active as well. I thank the New South Wales Government for supplying the $6.2 million, but we need greater leadership to make sure that's going and being utilised on a regular basis. What else have I got to say? I reckon that's that's really all.
Order, she has got some more to say.
Maybe I'll finish in saying for the Palm Beach ferry, which is a crucial link between the Central Coast and Sydney, 200,000 passengers a year that travel that route. It's important that we look after our waterways. We are proactive in maintaining those waterways. We do so much more than a dredging plan. Dredges are hard to get. We need to be planning in advance and make sure that we know when that's happening, so our lives that revolve around the beautiful waterways of New South Wales can be planned accordingly.
Well said. Madam Deputy Speaker.
The question is that the House take note of the petition. I call the member for the Tweed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Look, I rise to support the petitioners here and also thank the member for Myall Lakes for being very active in campaigning for this. Dredging of rivers is a very controversial thing. Currently, we're about to start dredging the mouth of the Tweed River. We're removing approximately 185,000 cubic metres of sand. Some members may remember the Tweed River actually has a permanent sand bypass established by a Labor government, I might add, which was very good, that replenishes sand to the southern Gold Coast. On average, it pumps around 500,000 cubic metres of sand per annum. It's not cheap, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think in the last 12, 15 years, it's probably cost around $200 million. It's jointly funded 50% by New South Wales, 25% by the Queensland Government and 25% by the Gold Coast City Council. And it works, it really works. Just further south, there's a Pottsville, the Kudgel Creek runs out there. It's now getting its breakwaters realigned and it's gone through dredging as well. Dredging, there is some funds there, but going through the process, and I can anticipate the frustration of the people around the Manning River, it is a very, very lengthy, difficult process. I've been an advocate to shorten it. There's issues with the EPA in terms of seagrass and various things like that. That whole process usually takes 6 to 2 years sometimes to work out that. There's the difficulty of obtaining a dredge that the member of Swansea and a few others have pointed out. The bigger dredges, that the big ships that actually take it from the river mouths, and we actually dump it over in Queensland, they work on a schedule from up at Cairns all the way down to Melbourne and all the way back. The difficulty, I'm being really honest here, Madam Deputy Speaker, the difficulty is if they get to your area and there's big seas, there's storms and that, they wait a certain amount of time, but then they move on. And then you only get them when they work their way back. It's a bit like painting the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Do we need more money? Yes. Do we need our own dredges? Perhaps. But we've had a lot of, in the final few minutes in speaking on dredging of rivers, there's a significant push, particularly on the North Coast, about dredging the rivers, whether they be the Richmond, the Tweed, the Wilson rivers, with all the vast quantities of mud that has come down in the floods. And, you know, the difficulty with the EPA is that they actually, at the beginning of the clean-up, said that you couldn't take the mud from your house and dump it back in the river because it was toxic. It had germs and different things like that. So there was the issue of how do you dispose of the mud. To be honest, most people put it back in the river, believing it came from the river. So a lot of people there believe in the older days they used to dredge the river on a regular basis, and the mud is building up. The river's getting shallower. I've got the same problems as the member for Gosford. Ferries and cruise boats run aground, etc. So I'm a believer in dredging the river. We're spending over $200 million on the Tweed Sand Bypass to affect maritime, and it's not happening. The entrance is clear, but up the river, the sand is building up. I acknowledge the environmental stuff. I know how important seagrass is for the breeding of fish and mangrove swamps and that, but I think we can do it better. It's a bit like the old days, Madam Deputy Speaker. If your dam pipes are plugged up with leaves, etc., you're going to have flooding. And that's what's happening to our river. And I'm a firm believer, being an active river user, that the greater the tidal flush, the more healthier the river system is. We've had cases of fish kills, black water in Richmond, lots of different things like that, particularly after a flood where that water sits and actually cooks the cane, and then weeks later it dribbles back. It's full of acid sulphate soil. But just even to clear the drains, it takes about 6 weeks or 6 months of getting 5 different government departments to sign: fisheries, water, council, drainage union, and all of that. It's an enormously painful thing, but I support the petitioners. I think we need to do something. I think the flood's been a big wake-up call.
Thank the member for Tweed. The question is that the House take note of the petition, and I call the member for Ballina.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise to speak on behalf of the Greens on this petition, and thank the member for Myall Lakes and of course and his community. And the reason, Madam Speaker, that I rise today to contribute is because members of that community have written to us. And I don't want to go there with the dredging, because it's a very, very controversial issue in my electorate. Yep. And I want to just simply raise some of the environmental issues that need to be taken into account. This isn't an either or some game. We're sick to death of that. We're all much more sophisticated than that. And I was very pleased to hear the Agriculture Minister talking today. We're hearing more and more that the Nationals are actually looking at things in a holistic way, which is very welcome, very welcome. And it isn't an either or, and certainly it's important to put on the record that the feasibility studies of the Manning River estuary, there is cause for caution, and that's about in terms of some of the endangered and threatened species in that area, particularly beach nesting birds, and so we know it's a very unique river system there, and that it's because it's a 2-mouth delta, and supposedly it's the only one in the Southern Hemisphere. And Madam Speaker, BirdLife Australia lists the Manning Estuary as one of 57 sites of national importance in the Australian National Directory of Important Migratory Shorebird Habitat. Both entrances of the Manning host a high diversity of shorebirds, of which 4 species meet the criteria for nationally significant populations. One of the residents community members who wrote to me said that in the last 18 months they personally had seen 25 species of shorebird on the sandflats in the Manning, several that are listed on either state, federal or on international red lists. Species seen at Harrington or Farquhar include the far eastern curlew, the bar-tailed godwit, great knot, red-necked stint and curlew sandpiper. So it's incredibly important that the plan for dredging and the holistic view of the river is taken into account. And I note the member for Tweed raised the Richmond River. Well, let me just say, could you please help us fix the Richmond River? Because we have been calling. Well, if I thought dredging it would return the Richmond River to its glory, I would agree to it. But unfortunately, what we have is horrendous. We've got a multitude of factors, not least of which we need to stop cows getting in that river, and we need to do something about the acid sulphate soils that are running down. And unfortunately as well, the drains, the hundreds of drains that were put in place, flood drains just after Federation, they are not cleaned and they're not looked after. And we've continued to work with the cane growers on trying to reduce some of the unnecessary green tape. And I call it that. It is green tape. It's gone to the other extreme. But that doesn't mean that we just go, just dredge everything. So, Madam Speaker, it's incredibly important.
We could work together on this.
Exactly, and I would love to see that. I would love to see an approach that is reasonable and that does not endanger our beautiful beach nesting birds. And Madam Speaker, there are other vagrant birds. The sandflats at Farquhar Inlet are the only place in Australia that Aleutian terns have ever been recorded. That's extraordinary. They were first recorded in 2016 but not identified until later review of photos in 2017. Changes in hydrology from estuary modification can be far-reaching and tidal influence can be much stronger, and we've certainly seen that in the mouth of the Richmond River in my electorate. When we tried, it was very innovative, but it was a floating shark net, and was a disaster. It literally was floated out to sea because there's so much volume of water. So, Madam Speaker, the Greens are not, the Greens party that I am in this state, we're not in the business of extremity for the hell of it. What we want to see is that we think we can do it. We can open the rivers, we can make them healthy again without sacrificing the environment. And I really thank those residents of the Manning River area who wrote to us to share their concerns about the protection of the environment and in particular the protection of shorebird and beach nesting bird populations.
Thank the member for Ballina. The question is that House take note of the petition. I call the Parliamentary Secretary in response.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I rise this afternoon as the Parliamentary Secretary for Infrastructure and Cities, Roads and Transport on behalf of the Minister. And can I commend the member for Myall Lakes for bringing the petition before the House and the effort that he has gone to amongst his community to bring the petition before us. Of course, I've stood in this chamber a number of times as well as you, Deputy Speaker, and we've heard the member for Myall Lakes quite fondly talking about the mighty Manning, and he certainly is a great advocate for it. And not only for its recreational benefits, but of course for its commercial benefits, and hence the petition that's here before us today. So it's easy to understand why the member for Myall Lakes is seeking a reliable and permanent river entrance for the Manning River. And I'm advised that when it's delivered, a permanent and reliable entrance would improve safety for commercial and recreational boat users, increase the use of the river and investment opportunity right through the Manning Valley. And this is why, Deputy Speaker, the New South Wales Government's provided funding for the development of a strategic business case. And it's important that such decisions with implications, that these be made on a sound basis, and that's why the strategic business case, and that's what it's designed to deliver. The strategic business case in the Manning River is designed to provide decision makers with information that will help them make informed decisions on the progression of the project to the next phase, which will be a final business case. Right. And I understand that Infrastructure New South Wales is scheduled to start an independent assurance review of the strategic business case in August 22 in accordance with their investor assurance framework. And I'm advised that the strategic business case has concluded that a safe and reliable entrance would realise much benefit to the region. Deputy Speaker, I understand that benefits would include an increase in local economic activity of approximately $33 million a year in tourism, the creation of approximately 160 new jobs in the region and an additional 30,000 boating trips each year. Perhaps more importantly, Deputy Speaker, the entrance would also improve safety and reliability for both commercial and recreational vessels, as well as improving water quality and waterway health. Deputy Speaker, it's also recognised that it could mitigate risks associated with catchment flooding and coastal erosion, as well as inundation of public and private property. Deputy Speaker, the Minister looks forward to the opportunity to update the place as progress on this takes place in coming months.
We do too.
Order. The question is that the House take note of the petition, and I call the member for the Upper Humber in reply.
And he's a good member too.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and what a great topic, what a great petition we've had, there's been a lot of great thinking, obviously, from some great leaders in the House. Some good wisdom has been put onto the floor. I thank the member for Swansea and obviously, expanded our knowledge of some of the challenges we've got all up and down the coast. Obviously, down there at Lake Macquarie, there's some challenges there with navigation channels just the same. The member of Clarence, thank you for your wholehearted support, and member for Gosford, thank you for your contribution to this. The member of Tweed, I loved his analogy, of course, of the blocked drain pipe. I really think that is probably the most adequate analogy we've heard today. And of course, the member for Ballina has obviously raised a number of environmental issues that we need to think about as we go forward with the final business case. I thank the Parliamentary Secretary for confirming that the government is driving forward on this, and they're onto it, and we want to see some action. I think you've seen it from both sides of the House. We want action, remembering, of course, environmental outcomes are important as well. But I think we can do both. We can open up these channels. We can increase growth in these areas. We can increase the good quality social way of life that people have on the coast, supporting all those river communities and coastal communities. So we hope that out of these last business cases, we will see some permanent dredging going on, and perhaps even an additional breakwall on the Harrington Inlet. But can I finally, from this House, thank the people of the Myall Lakes for putting together this petition, for delivering here in this House, and of course all those who led the community, including the member for Myall Lakes. Thank you. It's a very important topic, and we've heard you.
I thank the member for the Upper Hunter. The question is that the House take note of the petition. All of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The debate on the 10,000 signature petition having concluded, I want to thank the members of the public who are, I am sure, listening to the debate online.